Okay, I'm live. Oh, that's exciting. I just need to send out to people to let them know that. What on earth is going on? Okay. This is the most boring thing I've ever done because I don't have anyone watching me. Here we go. Emailing people. Third try. Come on, MailChimp. Hurry up. Hey! I know, Cody. I'm just trying to get back to send them an email. So bear with me, drink your champagne. I'll be talking madly to myself for a moment. I'm just going to send out the third one, but at least we got back online, hey? Thank goodness. Here we go. It's just, so slow. Send time. Save. Anyone else back? Oh, Karen, hi. Good. Hi. All right, guys, just sit back, relax. We'll get this show on the road. Third try. Save. Okay, content. Oh, for heaven's sakes. Oh, yes, we've got people coming back. Yay, Shell. Hello, Kay. Awesome. I'm just trying to send out the new link to everyone. So that's why I'm madly staring at this stupid thing because MailChimp's going super slow. But hopefully your sparkling wines are delicious. I'm going to have to crack on with the whole explaining thing. Come on. Oh my God, so slow. So slow. Okay. Edit, paste. Save and close. Continue. So just for those of you who have found me again, we're Jules feeding the kookaburras, and we've got champagne. I've been swearing at the computer. It's all fun and games. Who's there? Oh yeah, okay. So there's a few of you there. Now Microsoft Outlook is verifying. So all right. If any of you have still got link to open and are able to go back and type into it and tell them that we've got a new link, that would be much appreciated. But I'm just sending this off now. So hopefully a few more people will be able to find us. Send now. Save. Okay, sorry guys, this is so boring. Send. Right, send. Come on, send. I've got things to do, people to see. Okay, great. Thanks, Coddy. Thank you, everyone. Much appreciated. All right. So while we're just waiting for people to come and find us, if they can, hopefully this link will hold. I will start saying what I started saying at the. So I think I got up to about here, didn't I? Bourgeois Diaz, Blanc de Noir. So this is Pinot Noir and Meunier. It's about 70% Pinot Noir, about 30% Meunier. It's a little tiny house, champagne house that do things. Oh, good on you, Craig. Welcome back. Kate GPT. I'm glad she had some interest. Hi, David. Well done. Hello, Peter. Welcome back. Sorry, everyone. Hopefully this will work. Otherwise, I think if we have another problem, then probably it's just the gods of champagne are telling us that we should just go and drink our champagne and relax. Hey, you found me. Well done. Hello, Sarah. Hello, Kevin. Hello, Paul and Roz. Welcome back. Hello, Rob. Rob, indeed, we were just talking about you today. I feel like I haven't seen you guys for a million years. So welcome back. Lovely to see you. Okay, so just to recap, I have two champagnes. In my left-hand glass, I have the Bonaire, and in my right-hand glass, I have the Bourgeois Blanc de Noir. They're both quite difficult wines to find, so I'm very proud of you all for going out and finding different things. Kevin saying you couldn't find the selected one, so you're drinking the A.R. Le Noble Chui Grand Cru Blanc de Blanc. Excuse me. Also, I have hay fever. Said it was extra brut, but you're not sure. Okay. We'll talk about that in a minute, Kevin. But there's lots of ways of sort of testing on your palate whether it's extra brut or not. So we'll get to that. So Craig is asking, is Blanc de Noir any white and red blend, or are there rules? So no, Blanc de Noir has to be made from Pinot Noir and Meunier, or one or the other. So it can be blended between the two. Thanks, Nareem. I hope that you guys were all kind of relaxing and drinking your champagne and just enjoying the ambiance. But that was really. So Blanc de Noir cannot have Chardonnay in it. So the three grape varieties in Champagne are Chardonnay, which we know is a white grape variety, Pinot Noir, which we know is a red grape variety, and Meunier, which is it's very closely related to Pinot Noir, and it's also a red grape variety, but it tends to have a bit less colour than Pinot Noir. Not many people make red wine out of Meunier, although there are a few. Best's in Great Western is probably a really good example in Australia who make a good Meunier. So Blanc de Blanc, which is the Bonaire that I'm drinking, which I know that at least the Dyes are also drinking, I think. This is 100% Chardonnay. And you can see the colour is kind of a greeny gold. It's really pretty. It's got a gorgeous nose. Oh, it's very lemony, which is typical Chardonnay character from Champagne. It's also got a little bit of white peach. It's got a bit of blossom, so sort of white florals. I get this little anchovy kind of savouriness in that wine, which could be sound completely mad, but that's what I'm seeing on the nose here. It just gives it a bit of savouriness, and it's got this lovely minerally kind of chalky note to it as well, which is very typical for Champagne. On the palate, it's really lemony, it's really crisp, it's really fresh, and because it's an extra brut, the quality of the fruit has to be really high, because you don't have the sugar, the higher sugar dosage for a normal brut style champagne that hides a little bit of the acid and makes the fruit taste fruitier. So I'll go backwards for a minute to sort of make sense of that comment. So one of the things that has happened with Champagne over the last, let's say, about 100 years is that it's got drier. So in the 1920s, Champagne was drunk copiously and very much enjoyed by people at parties and at dinner and all that kind of thing. But it had quite high levels of sugar. And that's because Champagne is fruit grown in a very marginal climate. It's very hard to get it fully ripe. It's very hard to get the acid come down enough for it to be in balance as a dry wine. So in the 1920s, they added sort of between 20 and 30 grams per litre of sugar to sweeten it up, to make it taste fruitier, to make it more palatable. Drunk copiously, Craig. Michelle, well done. And people thought that was dry. And so over the ensuing years, taste for champagne, particularly in England and in Richard's rolling around on the floor with his cat, which is what the noise over there is. He's knocking over chairs, all sorts of craziness. It was sweeter than that 100 years ago. So Brut was traditionally the style that was the driest. And then in the last, let's say 10, 15 years, the champagne houses have noticed that it's been getting warmer. They've been having better vintages for ripening the fruit. And they have developed this extra brut style to really kind of hone in on the fruit quality, to reduce the sugar for people who are really kind of anti-sugar in sparkling wine. And you get a lot of people who are like, oh, I can't drink champagne because it's got sugar in it, so it's fattening, which is ridiculous because alcohol is also fattening. So don't worry about that. Sugar, no sugar, still not great for the waist, but, just in moderation is always good. People also worry about sugar in their wine for health reasons, which is also silly because, whatever. But there are also people who are looking for drier and drier flavours. So you get these extra brut styles, and extra brut is 0 grams per litre up to 7 grams per litre. It changes from year to year. I think 7 grams per litre is the current correct number, but it was 8 grams a couple of years ago. It may have gone down to 6. So it's around, it may have gone down to 6. So it's around somewhere between 6 and 7 grams. We guzzle in moderation, absolutely, Nareem. So what happens is you have to have better quality fruit because the dosage shouldn't make up to 12 grams per litre, should not make the wine taste sweet. It should just soften the acid because acid and sugar hide each other. And if you've ever made homemade lemonade, you'll know that. You just have to keep adding sugar until it's delicious to drink, because lemon juice on its own is quite hard work. And sugar also brings up the fruitiness. So a low fruit density wine like a classic champagne will be improved in its flavour by a little bit of sugar. So the fruit has to be better quality. And both of these producers are small family producers. They run their own viticulture. They look after their own vines. So they're making wines that have really good quality, pristine fruit. And the warmer seasons that we've had over the last couple of decades because of global warming mean that you're getting riper fruit and slightly softer acidity. They're still pretty high acid wines, these champagnes, but they're just a little bit softer and the fruit's a bit riper and a bit richer. And so they don't need the sugar to balance the wine out in the way that they used to. So they don't need the sugar to balance the wine out in the way that they used to. So Craig has asked, does the low dosage mean more likely to be less lees aging? It doesn't mean less lees aging, Craig, but it means that the wine's not going to age as well under cork. So when we're talking about champagne, and a lot of you have been in on the whole champagne conversation with me before, but let me recap very briefly. When we're talking about champagne production, they pick the grapes, they make a base wine from the juice from those grapes. And those grapes are low ripeness, high acid. They make a wine that's about 10.5% alcohol. That base wine, there'll be parcels from different parts of Champagne often. There'll be different vintages if we're looking at a non-vintage. They get blended together to make the house style, and then they get put in a bottle with some sugar and some yeast and sealed up and put in the cellar to do their second fermentation in bottle, which is where the bubbles come from. When that yeast has eaten all the sugar and created carbon dioxide, which makes the bubbles that can't escape because the bottle's sealed, the yeast will eventually die because it doesn't have any more sugar to eat. And when the yeast dies, it then sits in the wine, and after about 12 months, the yeast starts breaking down, and you get a thing called yeast autolysis, which is really highly sought after in champagne. Meunier develops yeast autolysis flavours first, then Pinot Noir, And Chardonnay takes a number of years to develop those autolytic characters. Yeast autolysis or autolytic characters smell a little bit like Vegemite. They smell a bit like biscuit, brioche, cheese, butter. They have a real kind of pastry character, and it's that lifted and that Vegemite kind of salty, yeasty kind of character. It's what we look for in champagne, and it's one of the things that we really love in champagne. So the low dosage doesn't mean it's more likely to be less lees aging, although in some houses, yes, they'll do that as a house style, because the dosage is added after the lees aging is finished. So when they've left the wine on lees for long enough, am I still gone? Paul and Ross said that I'm gone. So can the rest of you hear me, or am I just talking to myself? Let me know if I'm still communicating with the outside world. Oh, yeah, I think I might not be, because nobody's talking to me anymore, and I'm not saying anything fascinating anymore. All good, excellent, fantastic, thank goodness. Giving me conniptions. I need to have a sip of champagne now. After you've done your lees aging, and the minimum lees aging in champagne. After you've done your lees aging, and the minimum lees aging in champagne for non-vintage champagne is 18 months, and for vintage champagne is 3 years. So once that's finished, they need to rid all the bottles, which is that wiggling and getting the dead yeast lees out of the side of the bottle into the neck of the bottle. And then they'll disgorge it. That gets rid of all the solids out of the neck of the bottle. And then they've got a little bit of headspace in the bottle because they've taken the yeast lees out, and sometimes a little bit of wine escapes as well. So they add back base wine, reserve wine, and the amount of sugar that they think is appropriate for the dosage. And that sugar stays in the wine because we've got rid of all the yeast. So we're not going to see another fermentation in the bottle. That sugar stays as sugar. The reserve wine just kind of helps to top the bottle up. And when we're talking about these extra brut wines, they're either adding much lower sugar dosages. So you've been talking about Cotty's is 4 grams, Peter and Karen's is 4.5 grams. I, of course, have not done my research, and I don't know what the sugar levels are on these wines, which is very, oh yes, I do 4 grams for the Bon Air because they put it on the back label. Oh, Peter and Karen, that's annoying. Can you hear me at least? You can't see, my visuals are not working, but you can hear me. I'll keep going. Yell at me if you can't, if I've fallen in a heap again. But they'll add more reserve wine, less sugar, and the wine will be less sweet. And so the acid will be more obvious, and the fruit will have to fend for itself a little bit longer. So this is the longest answer to your question, Craig, ever, because the point that I wanted to make was that there's a very strong belief from a number of champagne experts that champagne that's low or no dosage, so extra brut styles, and sometimes they're called brut nature, sometimes they're called zero dosage. They've got a few different names for them. They don't have, the ones that don't have any sugar added to them, people believe are not going to age very well under cork, because a really important part of the aging process for champagne under cork is a thing called the Maillard reaction, which people talk about when they're talking about browning meat and barbecues and that kind of thing. And the Maillard reaction also happens under pressure with high acid and sugar. The sugar caramelizes in the wine. So you get these sort of caramelly notes in champagne that has a dosage once it's been aged under cork for a few years. And the champagnes that we're talking about here are things like, I don't know, Dom Perignon, Cristal, high-end vintage champagnes, the wines that are made to be put in the cellar and to be drunk later on. A lot of houses, big and small, will say our extra brut style is not for aging. Drink it now. drink it fresh, enjoy the brightness and the savouriness and the tanginess of the wine. And they often have a slight saltiness to them as well because of all the acid. So it's good. Craig, is it raw sugar or refined sugar that they add? Different houses do different things. It tends to be refined sugar, and it tends to be when they first add sugar for the second fermentation in bottle, they'll use beet sugar, which is the sugar that's produced in Europe. But a lot of houses will buy in cane sugar from the Maldives or from Jamaica or somewhere like that. Probably not from Australia, but maybe some are coming from Australia as well. But cane sugar to put in for the dosage at the end, because they think that it's got more purity, it's got less flavour to it, and it's a better, you get a better quality flavour from it. So they'll use they'll use refined sugar generally, but it'll usually be cane sugar for the dosage at the end. Right. Everyone's saying I'm good here still. Rob's asking, do big houses have machines to perform the disgorgement and top up, or is it manual? No, they have great machines, and they disgorge the wine under pressure, and they make sure that a lot of wine doesn't come out of the bottle and do everything all automatically. It's just all part of the bottling line. So unless you're a really small house and you don't have an automatic bottling line at all, then you'll be doing your disgorging using a clever machine. So that's sort of the extra brute fast Kate trying to catch up from being on buffering for the first 10, 15 minutes of our session. Then we have the distinction between Blanc de Blanc and Blanc de Noir, which I've told you the definitions between them, but how do they taste different? Because in Champagne, a lot of Pinot Noir particularly doesn't have the same fruit characters, aromas and flavours that it has. No, me too, Karen. Actually, Pinot Noir will tend to have less obvious characters in Champagne than it does in table wine because it's not as ripe. They tend to have higher yields in Champagne legally. And that's ideal because you don't want the amount of flavour in the base wine that you would want in table wine, because you're doing all these extra winemaking things that add flavour and complexity to the wine. And if there's a lot of fruit in the wine to taste, first of all, it kind of doesn't go well with the second fermentation flavours. It doesn't go well with the yeast autolysis. It doesn't go well with the bottle aging characters that you get later on. So this little slightly pink wine from Bourgeois Diaz, they call it BD''N, which stands for Blanc de Noir. They label it as a brut nature, which means it should mean that they haven't added any dosage at all. So this wine might have a gram or two of sugar in it left over from the second ferment in the bottle, because sometimes the yeast will die before all the sugar's fermented out, but it'll usually be less than a gram. So technically you won't be able to taste any of the sugar, and really they just kind of keep that. It's not bone dry, but as close to dry as is physically possible for a wine. David, the bol ici, Blanc de Blanc, Ogier et le Menil sur Ogier, has 5 grams per litre and 5 years on lees. It would be a gorgeous wine. I'm quite envious because Blanc de Blanc with 5 years on lees will be starting to show some yeast autolysis characters. Ogier and Le Menil sur Ogier are 2 Grand Cru villages in the Côte Blanc, and that's where the best champagne from Chardonnay is made. The best Chardonnay grapes are grown in Champagne. The Côte Blanc has the purest chalk soils, and Ogier and Le Menil sur Ogier are 2 of the best of the Grand Cru villages. And when we talk about Grand Cru and Premier Cru in Champagne, each of the villages that are designated Grand Cru or Premier Cru, all of the vineyards that belong to that village are designated Grand Cru or Premier Cru. So it's not like in Burgundy, the different vineyards get a Grand Cru, Premier Cru village designation, and then they link onto the village that they're related to with their name. Champagne's the other way around. It's sort of the village designates the Grand Cru, and all of the vineyards around get that Grand Cru designation. And I think that a Blanc de Blanc that's had that level of time on lees would have developed some beautiful honey toast secondary characters, just gorgeous, David, and wouldn't need too much sugar to bring out all that gorgeous flavour. So when I'm trying to explain how Chardonnay and Pinot Noir are different in Champagne, I don't usually have such strikingly different colours in the wine. Often, yes, Cotty, so you've fallen for the sparkling wine from somewhere else in France that's not Champagne. Those wines are still very yummy, and they're not allowed to be called Champagne, and so they're called Crémant de Bourgogne is what you're having. So it just means a wine made using the same winemaking technique that we call the method traditionnelle, or the traditional method. Same winemaking technique as Champagne, just a different region. A Crémant de Bourgogne will generally be made from Chardonnay and Pinot Noir as well. So a lot of similarities. They tend to be less time on lees and sometimes a little bit less expensive than a Champagne, partly because of marketing, because Champagne houses are very good at marketing themselves, and they've built up that value and price. And they've also got extra rules in place that rely on, that sort of designate the minimum level of quality you have to have for Champagne. But because people don't recognise it, so Champagne has definitely got excellent quality controls around the quality level of Champagne, and costs a lot of money to make, partly because the land is expensive and partly because it's expensive to make it and it takes a long time and all of those things. But Crémant de Bourgogne or Crémant d'Alsace or Crémant made using very similar techniques, but the wines are from different regions, and often the sparkling wines from Bourgogne and Loire, they can grow the fruit a little bit more cheaply than they can in Champagne, so they're often less expensive. I was going to say better value for money, but that's all in the eye of the beholder. And a lot of people would say that Champagne is more expensive, but also very good value for money for what you get in the glass, and I would probably agree with that. But Cody, your Bourgogne will be doing exactly the right thing, because those Crémant de Bourgogne usually tend to be extra brut, probably mostly Chardonnay, so you'll be getting all the same, nice tangy acidity, nice fresh, bright, lemony flavours. Hopefully it's delicious. So getting back to these two, different colours, which is unusual. Usually a Blanc de Noir would be much paler in colour than that, but because these guys are really kind of wanting to accentuate the character of the black grapes, they probably just let it sit on skins for a little bit longer than some houses would. They certainly won't have filtered it to get rid of the colour, and some houses will with the base wine. And this wine's got a really unusual nose. It's got a lot of red fruit character. There's some raspberry and strawberry there. And Sue was talking about almonds before, and I definitely see some nutty characters in there. Certainly some almonds, a little bit of hazelnut or something like that. There's also a really lovely kind of just freshly baked bread kind of a note to the wine. They're all, the bread and the almonds and the nutty characters will be coming from the winemaking rather than the grape varieties. The fruit, that raspberry strawberry kind of character, there's a little bit of mushroom savouriness, which will be coming from the Pinot Noir. So it's a strong personality Pinot Noir Meunier wine, so probably not that difficult to pick. But the really interesting thing about this wine, sorry, I think something's biting me. I had an ant on me before, and now I'm paranoid about being bitten. The really interesting thing about this Bourgeois Diaz is that because of the Pinot Noir and Meunier, and there's just a little bit of texture there, there's a bit of phenolics, almost a little bit of tannin, and it's really dry. So the acid's not quite as high as on the Bonnaire, but it's really dry and sort of almost chalky in its texture because of that dryness, and that acid is kind of coming through, and that little tiny bit of tannin because of that presumably, and again, I haven't read the technical notes as intently as I possibly should have, because I just wanted to taste the wine sort of without having any preconceptions. It's a really vinous champagne. So I think, in a way, the Bon Air is a wine. Both of them are a low or no dosage. The Bon Air is a bit more kind of upfront, bright. It reminds me, it's a little bit like Chablis. It's got a little bit more ripeness than some Blanc de Blanc champagnes will have, and I think that's really delightful. Little salty note on the finish on the Bon Air. But the thing about that Chardonnay is that it just goes straight down the middle of the palate. So it goes into your mouth, you taste it straight away. It travels all the way down the middle of your tongue. It's very focused. It's very long. It's a little narrow, but in a very attractive kind of, got to get where we're going kind of a way. And I think it's really delicious. But it doesn't spend any time hanging around the corners of your mouth. The Bourgeois d'As, being Pinot Noir, does the opposite. So you put it in your mouth, and you almost don't taste it for a moment. So if anyone else is drinking Pinot and Meunier based champagne tonight, if you just pop it in your mouth, then for a second you hardly taste anything. And then it kind of Meunier based champagne tonight, if you just pop it in your mouth, then for a second you hardly taste anything. And then it kind of goes, it diffuses across the whole of your palate. It's much broader. It goes into your cheeks, kind of travels across the top of your mouth, across your tongue, all the way around. And then it kind of finally goes down your throat. But you've got this lovely feeling of a round ball of Pinot Noir fruit in your mouth, and then just a little tadpole tail down the back of your throat as it disappears down. Very central in the palate, and it's very luscious in that way, but it finishes off quite dry and quite minerally and very subtly right at the finish. So all that flavour is right in the middle. And it's one of the reasons that traditionally in Champagne they blend the Chardonnay and the Pinot Noir together, because the Chardonnay gives you that length and the Pinot Noir gives you that breadth, and the Meunier gives it a bit more fluffiness and richness in the mid-palate as well. So you get a really complete wine when you blend all three characters together. I think that doesn't have any dosage, for me suggests, and I don't know how these Bourgeois d'As wines will age because I've never tasted them before. I'm really fascinated by that wine. I think it's delicious, but it's a wine that you have to think a lot harder about than the Bon Air, which is a bit more just joyous. Do you guys need some more champagne? Feel free to come and get it. You've got empty glasses over there. They didn't get any buffering, so they've been listening to me now for nearly an hour, whereas you guys have only been talking to me for 30 minutes. So we're looking a bit tired, looking a bit weary. So Katie, Essentiel is 44% Pinot, 34% Meunier, and 22% Chardonnay. That's a really lovely blend. It's a really nice combination of flavors and balances. So I think, champagne, we can just kind of go yay champagne and glug it back and enjoy it, and that's very fun. But if you really want to get geeky about champagne, then there's so much to learn. And I think these extra brut styles they don't appeal to everyone. I think it's a little bit like people who put sugar in their coffee compared to people who don't. If you put sugar in your coffee, it brings out all the caramel flavors of the coffee. It brings out, and particularly in an espresso, a bit of sugar in the coffee brings all the flavor up and forward and softens the acidity of your coffee. But an espresso without sugar, if it's really well made, has this incredible purity and drive to it. In the same way, these champagnes, when they're really well made and they're made from nice ripe fruit and they've got good natural balance without having to add sugar, then there's something really racy and vibrant and exciting about the extra brut style. I think those of you who are having fish and chips with your extra brut will be very happy, because the acid and the lack of sugar really will cut through the oil of the fish and chips, and it'll work really nicely with the seafood flavors as well as the chips. Anyone who's having oysters will be in heaven with these wines, I reckon. Craig, do they blend at the time of bottling, or do they blend the house blend and then leave it to age till they use it? Different. So most houses, Craig, will make decisions about. So there's two different parcels. You've got your grapes that come in the year that you're making the batch of champagne, and I'm talking about now non-vintage champagne, because vintage champagne is 100% from that vintage, so there's no reserve wine. But for non-vintage champagne, there's the fruit that's grown in the year and made into base wine and then used for the blending straight away. And then there's the reserve wine. Every house needs to hold back 20% of each vintage as reserve wine to blend back into non-vintage blends in the future. And the reason for that is because of bad weather in the past and inconsistent vintages. And so making a consistently good product in bad years as well as good years, there's this rule that you have to hold back some fruit every year. So if it's a good year, you can't just make it all into vintage wine and sell it for more money. You need to keep some of it for your reserve to be able to improve the lesser years. And if it's a bad year, you have to hold some of it back to sort of even out the really good vintages, if that makes sense. So, Craig, the reserve wine gets held in lots of different ways depending on the houses. A lot of houses will use refrigerated stainless steel tanks to keep it fresh. Some houses will age their reserve wine in oak or barrels, usually old, usually big, but depending on the house. Krug keeps all its reserve wine in small oak barrels, old still though. Bollinger keeps all their reserve wine in magnums under cork, upside down in the cellar. They're crazy, but that's what they do. Once it's blended, then it'll go to bottle with the sugar and the yeast to go down into the cellar to do the second fermentation to get bubbles. And if they decide that they want to age it for longer, they leave it on lees for longer after the second fermentation has happened. Because if you keep them on lees and you keep the bottle sealed, then the pressurization is perfect, so the bubbles stay in there. The lees tend to keep the wine young, and there's a lot of science behind that I don't have time and don't have the understanding to explain to you, but basically the lees keeps the wine fresh. And when the wine's ready to be sold, that's when they get it ready for selling by riddling, disgorging, and then dressing the bottles. And then they hold the bottles for 6 months before they release them, because they just need to settle down and the dosage needs to kind of blend into the wine well. Hope that makes sense. David, straight Meunier champagnes aren't common. Yes, Egliurier does make a straight Meunier. Is this due to much smaller amounts planted, or is it just not great alone? So, David, neither of those suppositions are true. There's lots and lots of Meunier planted. A lot of it's not great. A lot of it's planted in places where Chardonnay and Pinot Noir don't do well, on the flatlands where there's frosts in early spring, because Meunier tends to flower and set fruit later than Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, and it tends to ripen faster. It's got a more compressed growing season. So in a region like Champagne, where it's very it can be quite marginal, less so now than 10, 15, 20 years ago. But Meunier is sort of the stopgap, and a lot of people grow Meunier to be cheap and cheerful and to fill out their non-vintage blends. So at that level, Meunier is not as good as Pinot Noir or Chardonnay, particularly if the Pinot Noir or Chardonnay is grown in a Grand Cru or a Premier Cru vineyard. But there are people, and the belief in Meunier is growing in Champagne. So Egliurier definitely love high quality Meunier. Thank you, John Noble. I knew you were there somewhere. 31% of all vineyards plantings in Champagne are Meunier, says John Noble from the Champagne Bureau in Sydney. Thank you very much, John. But the houses that really like Meunier as a quality wine, rather than and when I'm talking about quality wine and not quality wine, all champagne is quality wine, but a lot, because Meunier can handle lesser conditions, it tends to be used as a filler, as I said. But houses like Egliurier, Krug, there are others that are not popping into my mind, but Krug is a very good example of a house that only uses Grand Cru vineyard Meunier, and the wine is exquisite. And they use quite a large percentage of Meunier in their blend, and they say that it's a very important part of the Krug style. It gives it its richness and its meatiness. Thank you, John. I knew you were here for something. Bicatsamon, Berset de Bellefond, La Haute Frère also love Meunier. And if you grow it in the right place and you treat it with the same respect as Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, you can get really fantastic results from it. And I think if you ever get to Dad, could I have the bottles back again, just so I can show people the labels again? If you ever get to taste the Bourgeois Diaz, thank you, which is this one, which you'll probably, oh, hang on, there we go, camera. The Bourgeois Diaz Blanc de Noir, you'll probably find it you're more likely to find it in restaurants probably than retail, but keep an eye out for it. Hassle the importers, find out where you can buy it, because a wine like this really shows a love of the black grape varieties, and not just Pinot Noir, but Meunier. It's got a richness and a roundness to it, which I think is really awesome. And as the bubbles go away, because you drink it out of a Sangiovese glass and you give it a swirl, and you lose the bubbles faster than you do in a flute. But the wine opens up more, and you can see the vinous quality of the wine more. It's also, Jill's pointing out, and I should actually say this because the Champenois are also very good at being involved with particularly these little guys. It's a vin biologique, so that's kind of the equivalent of biodynamics in France. It's a little bit different, but it means that they're really trying to look after the soil, look after the vines, look after the countryside around them. Minimal sprays. A lot of Champagne is, again, as I said, it's a marginal region, so there's a lot of disease pressure. So being biodynamic and organic is very difficult, but there are a lot of people kind of working towards it. And when they get those kind of qualifications, these guys are certified biologique. They've got Demeter certification. So they're really working hard to look after the planet, their vineyards at least. So yeah. Kay, did your talking thing do something weird then? I missed your message and you've retracted it now. Something about shoulders. But it's a wine that I'd love to have with food. And this, I reckon, the Bourgeois Diaz Blanc de Noir found the tulip glass to be better with the Essentiel. Yes, the tulip glass is going to work better to show off the fruit characters than a straight up and down flute, for sure. Anyone who is having chicken sandwiches with their champagne, that would be what I would want to. That would be one of the things that I'd want to eat with these. A good roast chicken would be nice, bit of pork, whatever. Making everyone here very hungry by saying that, because they've got a paltry little bowl of nuts that is really not doing the trick. So, gang, we started late. I'm so sorry about my technical issues. I'll never say anything bad about the IT gods just before we start doing Drinks with Kate again. We got there in the end. I hope you've had a beautiful drink of whatever you're drinking: champagne, Cremant de Bourgogne, gin and tonic, cup of tea. It's been really fun, everyone, and we'll have to see if we can maybe do a champagne tasting as maybe part of Drinks with Kate live next year, or be in the same room. I did it, Shell. That would be that was awesome. Thank you, everyone. Cheers. That was awesome. Thank you, everyone. Cheers. I'm going to go and drink my champagne now. And also, now that I'm at the end of the broadcast, I'd just like to say, here's to Frodo. We miss you. Cheers, everyone. Love you all. Take care. Thank you.